A Christian is usually full-time because it's a lifestyle. It's a life itself. A life that you have chosen to live. 24 hours a day, you are a Christian. So a person called into ministry is in full-time ministry. What is ministry? Ministry involves praying. When you are not praying, you are doing counseling. When you are not doing counseling, you are studying so that you can develop yourself and develop the people around you. So all that is part of the ministry, and that is full-time. So a full-time minister doesn't mean that you can be in your office and be praying. That's ministry, building yourself so that you can build other people up. You can be in the office and receive phone calls asking you for prayers. You are doing the work. Do ministry very well is a full-time minister. So the fact that I have other abilities that I am utilizing doesn't mean that I am not a full-time minister, because the reason why a minister that works have found a better reason to do that work. He is doing that work so that he can be enabled to do ministry in a better way. For instance, I don't go to work so that I can have food to eat. I go to work so that I can have money to do the ministry. What that means is, as I am doing that work and I'm getting paid for that work, my time spent in that work is also being spent in the ministry. Like we are going to see in Acts of the Apostles chapter 20 verse 34, there is something very important that Paul said there. He was talking to some brethren when he was about to go to Jerusalem. He said, "These my two hands have provided for me. All the time that I have been with you, I have not been a burden to any one of you. I have not coveted what belonged to any one of you." Now, the only reason why Paul could speak like this is because Paul understood that he didn't have to wait for the brethren to take care of all his needs. If you look at the scripture very well, Paul always taught people about working so that you will have for yourself and have in excess to give to other people.
Yeah.
So he could talk like this. I was not a burden. 9 verse 13, Paul said it was his right that those that walk on the altar should be taken care of by the altar, right? But in Acts 20 verse 34, he said, even though I know my rights, these are supposed to be my rights, but I am not a burden to you. Why is Paul not a burden to them? Paul was not a burden to them because Paul did not discard his profession. He learned a hard work. In Acts 18 verse 3, the Bible said he went somewhere and he stayed with tent makers because that was his trade. So he did not abandon tent making. In fact, he got another understanding of tent making. This time around, tent making became a source of income, number one, so that he will not be a burden to the people that he was preaching to. Like the place where I am now in the village, there is a way I'll be there for 10 years. There is a way that the people will run away from what we are doing there if I take my civilization. You know, once you are civilized and the village people need to take care of you, you become expensive for them. You understand? You become expensive for them. Now, the reason why I can stay there for 10 years like this is because I am not a financial burden to them. Why? Because I am a ministry, a secular ministry in Makurdi that is paying for my expenses in the village and also taking care of them. So I believe that whatever I am doing here, knowing the purpose of my being here, is full-time ministry.
Oh, wow, that's lovely. So you talked about learning a handwork. Would you advise pastors and ministers of God who are into ministry to learn a handwork?
Yes. Last week I was talking to someone here that started a church this year, around October. And he was complaining about his church members. They are not many. they can't provide for him and all that. And I told him, what do you do with your time? So I started giving him instances of, you can go and learn tailoring, you can go and learn furniture making, get a handwork that can support, number one, your family. I told him, I said, you have been called into ministry. There is a big possibility that your wife have not been called. You are the pastor. You can suffer. But let your family not suffer for you. As a matter of fact, going to learn a trade, becoming proficient in it, is part of being responsible for yourself, your family, and God's work. So I said, go and learn a trade. Be able to feed yourself. Otherwise, ministry itself becomes a burden. Then as people even see the way you suffer in that ministry, because you have not been responsible, when God calls them, it becomes difficult for them to respond to that call. They will start saying, well, I don't want to suffer like Pastor so and so. You know, he was doing very well, but when he entered that ministry, he stopped. In fact, it's like his life went down. Not because God is not faithful, but because the called did not apply wisdom. Now, the Bible said that a soul winner is wise. Now, let me look at that scripture this way. It takes wisdom to win souls, to continuously win souls. Now, part of that wisdom will be that you look at what God is doing in your life, in that ministry. You have to know the stage of your ministry. Do you have people in that ministry that can contribute to take care of your life? You have to understand all that. Now, once you see that these things are not possible from your congregation, it takes wisdom for you to learn a trade so that you can support yourself and even support, those in your ministry. As they see their pastor learn a trade, it becomes easy for them to follow their pastor. The pastor said, you go and learn a trade. One of the things I have seen in ministry is that the first few years of your ministry, those that will come to follow you, they need help like you. You need help. They need help. And the best way to make sure that they can really learn is when they see you by example. They see that pastor is doing his best to feed his family. Why don't I do the same thing? You tell them, you look at me, I am learning this. Look at me, I'm doing this. Look at me, I'm doing this business. As they see you doing these kind of things, they will begin to learn trade on their own. Then in a few years' time, pastor is stable financially. Then his church members are also stable financially. And before you know it, the church can do more than they used to do before. So I encourage every pastor that cannot just wait because of the state of their congregation for them to really feed them, to pick up a trade and be the best in that trade.
Okay. To make reference also to 1 Corinthians chapter 9 that you quoted.
Yes.
In that place, Paul talked about those who labor on the altar should be taken care of by the altar. So what's your take on pastors who place themselves on salary from their churches? The church is the pastor. They place themselves on salaries because probably they believe that scripture that they should be taken care of by the altar. Are you okay with pastors placing themselves and their wives on salaries from the church?
If the church can afford it, that's fine. If the church can afford that salary, that's fine. But if that salary is a burden to the church, then that's a problem. I will not have my church members go hungry because they want to feed me. I will not have their children be at home because they have not paid school fees, just because they donated money to celebrate pastor's birthday or they contributed money to change pastor's car. Every church have their own financial strength, and I believe every church is on several kinds of journey, including financial journey. So if we start a church at the beginning and we see that we don't have that strength, we will know that by wisdom, we will know that this church cannot take care of us. So we should not enforce that salary. But when we come to a point that also leaving part of our other businesses to pay more attention to the spiritual growth of the church, and we know that the church can afford it. At that time, we can now say, okay, let us take salary from the church. And even as you are taking that salary from the church, there can be months as you start it that the church will not be able to pay that salary. And you should not strangle the church for that salary. You have to bear it, whether they have it or they don't have it. I would prefer that I would not even call it salary. We'll call it another name, maybe allowance or stipend. you know, I understand. So it is not compulsory, but if a church can do it, it's okay. That they take care of some of the expenses of not just the pastor, not just the senior pastors, but committed workers of the church that are spending almost all their time in the ministry.
Okay, now I've heard two varying schools of thoughts about this issue of full-time ministry. Those who are for it say Jesus Christ was doing carpentry work, but when God called him, he abandoned carpentry work and went full-time. And then in Matthew chapter 4, verse 19, he met the first set of disciples he called. They were fishermen. He came to them and said, follow me, and I'll make you fishers of men. And they abandoned their profession and followed him. Likewise, Matthew the tax collector, they abandoned their profession and they followed him. Now, with these scriptures I've just quoted, is it okay for somebody to say, God has called me, I'm an architect, I was lecturing in a school, I was teaching somewhere, I was a footballer, God has called me, so according to what I saw in the Bible, let me leave what I was doing now so that I can be effective to give myself to the ministry of prayer and the word? Is it okay to leave what you were doing as when God called you? Because they quote those scriptures I just quoted. Jesus Christ left carpentry.
My answer to that question will be that every call comes with specific details. The detail of my call will be different from the detail of your call. You know, we are in a time now that the Holy Ghost leads us into every truth. So when God calls you, he gives you specific instructions. For example, I have a friend here that was selling rice in the market. As he was selling that rice in the market, God called him. And God said, you are now going to work for me. He was still selling in the market. After a few years, God said, concentrate on the ministry. At that time that God was telling him this, the ministry wasn't even strong enough to take care of him. But he was used to finances. He was a businessman doing very well, and God wanted to teach him the way of poverty too. So God said, stop that business. He stopped. He went through some difficulties, and today, the church have grown to a point where the people can take care of him. So God gave him that specific instruction. So my question to that pastor will be, did God ask you to leave that ministry or to leave that business? Let me give you another example. When God called Pastor Paul Enenche, for example, he was already a medical doctor. Himself and his wife, they were still practicing. It came to a point, he stopped practicing. The wife was still practicing. They were watching the finances of the church. So they came to another point and he said, okay, you two can stop working in that hospital. Both of them entered the ministry full time. I believe that gave them a lot of financial stability because they did not just quit. Most of the people that will just leave their job, if you look at them very well, the emphasis in their ministry is finances. You cannot do God's work without money. And one of the most reliable source of income that you will have initially will be the one that is from you. So when you abandon that, people will just, all of your preaching will be sacrificed. Give this, go and bring this, go and bring, because you know that you have to buy fuel, you know that you have to buy band, you know that you have to buy battery, you know that you have to pay the accommodation and all that. You need to put pressure, financial pressure on the people. Now, I also know some persons that they didn't learn any trade, okay? I know those that they learned nothing. In fact, they didn't go to any Bible school. They stopped at secondary school, for example. They had just call them. And before you know it, just give them one one man that is just supplying them everything. He knows their weakness. I have somebody in Ogobia, for example. That man stopped at GSS 3. He became an armed robber at a point. His colleagues died. So he gave his life to Christ. He started the prophetic ministry. Then somehow just one man just came and said, God said, I should be the one helping you. And the man is been consistent monthly for the past 8 years.
Wow.
That man is giving him that money every month. So God knows our abilities, what we can carry and what we cannot carry. No, there are some persons that cannot do two things at a time. One of them must really suffer. They cannot multitask. So people can only do business. Some can only do ministry. I had a dunamis pastor here that I used to talk to him. I said, sir, why don't you do this, do that? He said, no. He said, I know myself very well. That time I was struggling. He said, I know myself very well. If I do any other thing, I cannot do this ministry well. So I can't do two things at a time. That is why I would rather just suffer and make sure that I grow in this ministry. So God gives us all our abilities. So now he will look into that ability to give you instructions. You know, when you even look at you say this one is not for all of you. This one is general instruction. There's a general instruction and there's a specific instruction. What makes a minister different from the other is the specific instruction. So we must always ask God, has he asked you to stop that business? Has he asked you to go to ministry without trying to look for any other source of income? Or he has asked you to keep that on the side and he will give you the next instruction. Look at Elijah, for example. The brook will dry. God will give him another instruction. They were always taking care of Elijah. But Abraham was also a prophet. Nobody took care of Abraham because Abraham was a rich man. And even when Abraham was called of God, he didn't leave his other businesses. The Bible says he had cattle, he had gold and all that. He had 300 servants. To feed 300 people in a day, on a daily basis is not child's play. Abraham did not leave his profession. Abraham was a prophet. He was a rich man before God called him. And he entered more riches. And he did not stop his occupation. He did not stop his business. He was an entrepreneur. So, based on our abilities combined, what we can do. Look at David, prophet, musician, worker in the house of Saul, warrior and all that. He had shepherd and all that. You can see that at every point of the time that he was running away from Saul, he was using one or two of these things to survive. He was either fighting, or he was going to one farm to pluck one thing, or he was somewhere just trying to make music out of that situation so that he can feel better and all that. So we must always ask God. What's the conclusion? God can tell you to stop what you are doing so that you can go full time. God can ask you to go to enter full-time ministry without telling you to stop what you were doing. So the bottom line is that we must always ask God for that detail so that we don't mix things up.
Okay. Another very critical aspect we're going to discuss when we come back from our break is the aspect of ministers who charge money very heavily even before they are invited for programs. We'll find out whether this is one of the side effects of those doing full-time ministry without an additional source of income. Welcome back. Sir, just before the break, you were pressing home your points as to why you believe full-time pastors should have other things they do. There's an opinion again that says, like you mentioned, Pastor Paul Enicha and his wife, those who are not into full-time, who still do other things with the ministry, are they as impactful as the ones who have actually settled into full-time ministry? Many years ago, Bishop David Oyedepo was criticized for calling ministry business. He said, my father's business. Jesus said, I should be about my father's business. My father works and I work. So he decided to create office hours for pastors, where Living Faith pastors come to work at like 8 o'clock and close by 4. They work like every other person and they are paid for that. He felt the best way to create a balance was you employ them and let them be placed on salary, and they will come to work and do full-time pastoral work, read, Bible study, and whatever is needed, and then they are paid so that they will focus their attention and not do other things. And we have seen massive results and all of that. So my question now is, I know as at that point when Pastor Paul Enenche left medical practice and then focused on dunamis, that the ministry began to explode. Can you really say that those pastors who are still holding ministry with one hand and still other things with one hand, can they, if possible, give me examples, can they really be as impactful as some of these ministries we are seeing, like Living Faith Church and Dunamis, where their senior pastors and founders have actually left everything else and they're focused on ministry? Those who are not doing so, those who are combining ministry with other things, sources of income, can they be as impactful? Can they ever become as impactful as these men?
To answer that question, I will start by saying that the names you just called, Pastor Paul Enenche, David Oyedepo, I can tell you that up till now, in fact, when they left the other job, you know, that job will come with restriction. That's why it is important that you build to a point that you can actually leave these jobs. It's like you going to the promised land and being an employee in Egypt with all the restrictions of Egypt. You understand?
Yes.
You are answerable to your job. You have to be there at a time. You have to, so there are sometimes you have to be in church and you have to be at your job. Otherwise, you have a problem. So these people left that job in Egypt and they found something better in Israel. These people have not left business.
Okay.
One of the things I would like to let you know and let every other viewer know today is that these are our fathers in the Lord. They are doing more business than we can say.
Wow.
Just that they will not come and say, I own this, I own that, I own this. They will not talk about those kind of things because what they have to be known for is the ministry. But behind it, there are so many things that they are doing. For example, is Covenant University not a business? People are paying school fees. Who is the chancellor of the university? Is Bishop Oyedepo. That is business. He's making money from there. Is Landmark University not a business venture? Understand? So he's in business. Dominion Books, Dominion Publication, all the books that you hear about. He's also doing some things with oil.
Okay.
Now, you are also in ministry. You are going to discover that the things you see in this men's ministry cannot be from tithe and offering. As they grow, as they meet other people, because ministry at a point you can convert from social wealth to financial wealth. So they are doing things that they are doing other businesses. When you look at Pastor Paul Enenche's ministry too, you are going to see business around him. You are going to see things like construction. You know, he has earth moving machines, for example, that are doing road construction here and there. But they don't need to come and stand and say, this is what we are doing, this is what we are doing. The books that they are writing, the Bible school that people are going to, people are paying. They have nursery schools, they have secondary schools. People are paying for these things. So they are still doing business. You know, when you have people, you have resources. When you collect 100 naira from 1 million people, do the mathematics, you know what it means. So they have not left business. They are still doing business to ensure that the ministry can stand and the ministry can explode. So they are effectively doing this too. You will see, like, okay, the Dunamis TV, for example, Pastor Paul Enenche is referred to as the founder and the CEO of Dunamis TV. The other people that's a business venture. But they are still effective in the ministry. In fact, they are doing more work that you might not call ministry now than even when they were working for the Algas. Okay?
Yes.
So because this time around they have to be doing all kinds of plan for the TV, all kinds of plan for the nursery and primary school, all kinds of plan to expand their publications and all that, and the other things that they are opening. Even branch expansion alone and training pastors is a lot of work and preparation that they are also doing. So at the end of the day, I'm going to discover that no successful pastor at that level is not doing business. When you cross and you go to US, for example, T.D. Jakes, for example, is the owner of more than 50 businesses. You know that. He's owner of more than 50 businesses. He's always bringing up one company and the other. So he's still not only reading Bible and preaching. He's still shooting movies. He's acting in some of them. He's going out to speak, and he's being paid as a motivational speaker and all that. That is not part of reading Bible and preaching to a congregation. But that is still seen as ministry. If you see your life as a minister, whatever you do becomes a ministry. You understand? And like the Bible said that the laborer is deserving of his reward.
Yes.
This is going to return naturally. So anyone that is saying that I am in full time, so I am more effective than the other person because this other person left fully, and the person is doing well, so I have to leave. These people have not left business. They are still doing business. So we have to understand. I don't believe as a person that Jesus always didn't have money. The reason why I don't believe that is because Jesus had a treasurer. Judas was the treasurer of Jesus. Now, if you don't have money, where there is no money, there is no need for a treasurer. And the Bible said that Jesus had a treasurer, which means around the ministry of Jesus, there was money somehow. No, the Bible did not say ministry. The Bible said that there were some women that were helping him in the ministry, right? Contributing to the ministry.
Yes.
You understand? And I also saw that once in a while, like there was an example that he sent Peter, a fisherman, okay, to go and get money from that fish. Because Jesus did not send Judas or somebody else, because Judas did not have experience with fishing. Though he was a treasurer, that errand would not be for him. Rather, he sent a person that had experience in that trade. Go and get that fish. There can be other instances where they would have gone back to also make money. You know, when Jesus Christ died, if you remember, Peter took the other ones. They went back
To fishing.
so that at least they can stay alive. So it is possible that when the master was alive, there were other ways that money was coming. And now, because they were not Jesus, they couldn't sustain that way, that particular way. They had to go back to the way that they were used to. So, a minister's life is ministry. You should see publication of book as ministry, opening of that school as ministry, selling food in church like we have now as ministry. All of these things, they are ministry. So you should not just limit ministry. So our definition of what ministry is very important. You should get a good understanding of what ministry is and begin to see that angels don't bring money. Human beings bring money. Ideas bring money. You understand? God will not shut our brain when we get born again and become pastors. Actually, the Spirit of God in us open us to so many other ideas that will help us to raise resources. Because the best way of funding God's projects is by God's people. God will not want to depend on one pagan to fund church. It is when his people, his children fail to do that, that God cannot touch one Muslim man to help that church. But in his own original design, he would rather have his children in church, his children in the kingdom, to have more than enough to fund his ministry.
Okay, let me read this scripture we've been quoting. Let me read some portion of it,
Okay.
and that's my next question. 1 Corinthians chapter 9,
Yes.
from verse 11.
Okay.
Paul says, if we have sown spiritual seed among you,
Yes.
is it too much if we reap a material harvest from you? If others have this right of support from you, shouldn't we have it all the more? But we did not use this right.
Yes.
On the contrary, we put up with anything rather than hinder the gospel of Christ.
Yes.
I like the way I like the words. Hinder the
Yes.
gospel of Christ.
Christ.
Then verse 14. Okay, let me continue. 13. Don't you know that those who work in the temple get their food from the temple, and those who serve at the altar share in what is offered on the altar? In the same way, the Lord has commanded that those who preach the gospel should receive their living from the gospel. Then verse 15, he now says, but I have not used any of these rights,
Yes.
and I am not writing this in the hope that you will do such things for me.
Yes.
I would rather die than have anyone deprive me of this boast.
Yes.
Now, so what do you make of these preachers who charge money? They charge exorbitantly, maybe for 2 days, and he gives you his target honorarium and prescribes the kind of hotel you should lodge him, and you have to like even make part payment before he comes.
Now, when you look at Matthew chapter 10, verse 8, he said, freely you have received. Freely you should give. That verse starts from, he say, cast out demons, heal the sick. He say, cast out demons, heal the sick. He now say, raise the dead. Freely you have received, freely you should give. Now, anyone that is charging for the gospel is not of God. Our example, like the Bible says, looking unto Jesus, the author and the finisher of our faith, is Jesus. So my question now is, did Jesus charge while preaching? No. Jesus did not charge. Every gift of God is freely given. We must understand as ministers that we are not working for the people. We are working for God. So we should not expect a reward from the people we are preaching to. My experience in the gospel is that I have gone to places where I spend my own money and all that. Okay? Like in October, I went somewhere to preach. I traveled from here like 4 hours to go and preach in that place. They didn't have anything to give to me. You understand? But somebody that I didn't preach for, after I finished preaching in that place, he knew that I was in that town, and called me and said, "Sir, I would like to see you. Have you gone to Makurdi?" So I said, "Okay, I'll see you on my way to Makurdi." I went to his place. We spent time together, and I was going. He gave me an envelope. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. Now, I preached to these people, this congregation of God. You know, you hear Pastor said, I went to preach for Pastor Michael Iduh. I went to preach for Pastor Gabriel. You understand? That's okay, but you're not preaching for Pastor Gabriel. You are preaching to God's children. You are in the Lord's vineyard. So your expectation should not be from that people. That congregation and their pastor did not have anything to give to me. Another of God's children gave me a call, whether I like it or not. If I didn't come for that preaching, that man would not call me to give me that money. So the Lord paid. In fact, and the Lord used that man to give me far more than what that church would have given. So when we look at that reward system, that it is from God, no church can give you enough, pays you in this call, it will be very easy for you to accept treatment from people. You know, pride kills in ministry. There are conditions that we stay in our own houses, for example. Some of us don't even have mattress in our house. Some of us don't have good water in our house. But the moment we leave our house going somewhere to preach, we want a 5-star hotel. We want a particular number of cars to escort us to church. We want them to receive us from the city gate. We have all these kind of conditions because, you know, some of us are in perfect competition with the world. We look at it the way Two-Face comes to town and is received. And we want to assume this celebrity status. We don't know that in this kingdom, we are servants. We are lowly servants. The Lord decides what is necessary. The Lord decides what is needful. So charging is not of God. I once asked someone to come and sing in Macaulay 10 years ago. And the person, 10 years ago, he said per night is 500,000. Yes, from Lagos. We were doing a Macaulay Numa fire explosion. May 2010. He was supposed to be here for 2 nights. And he said, one night, 500,000. Last.
Wow.
And he described the hotel. He told me that he will come with his whole band from Lagos. I will pay their flight to Abuja and I'll bring them to Macaulay. And I'll do same backward. By the time I added all that together, just to bring that man alone was costing me almost 2 million naira. That was how the man did not come. A lot of times we put ourselves through these things. I just looked around and I brought some people from around here and the Lord did marvelous things. You know, the Lord overperformed. He did marvelous things. And you can imagine that it looks like the Lord showed us that night that I am not in names. I am not in fame. I can use anybody. So charging, whether you are a pastor, whether you are a music minister, is not of God. Some will say that I went to that place and it did not treat me well. The only reason why you can talk like that because you are working for God. There's a difference between working for God and working with God. When me and you are working together, we are working with. We are sharing responsibility. We are sharing gain. We are sharing suffering. If the month ends and I don't have money to give you, you know we are working together. You are working with me. You not go crazy that there's no money. You not fight me, not take me to court. But if you are working for me, you have a reward in your mind. If that reward doesn't come at the end of the month, there's a reaction that comes up because you were working for a reward, not really with me. So a lot of people are working for themselves in the Lord's vineyard. In fact, I can't say in the Lord's vineyard. Let's say in their own vineyard. They have created a vineyard. They have this character of converting stones into bread. Every human being they see around in the congregation is a stone that they have to convert into bread. That's why they do that fundraising. That's why they charge, because they are now big. You know, their family need to feed another. They have refused to leave that in the hands of God. So I want to speak to anyone that is currently charging. It doesn't matter who you know that is charging. If it is wrong, it is wrong. It is not biblical for anyone to charge. Jesus did not charge. The prophets did not charge. Okay? In fact, they get angry when you want to pay. Simon Magus wanted to pay so that he will receive the gift of the apostle. And that's already made him very angry because he was talking about payment. The same actually running after now. If you have 2 meetings now, for example, okay, a minister will be invited to Ogobia, my village, where people don't even have 1,000 naira in a month, and is invited to go to Abuja to preach. If I have made arrangement with him first, on the same day, and somebody else make the same another arrangement the same day with him in Abuja, he will call me off. Do you know why? Because when he comes to Ogobia, he knows that he might not get anything. But when he gets to some places, he will come back with something. So they are moved by reward. Sir, it is unfortunate that some of us are forced reward, okay, in the lifetime. That when we appear before God in heaven, He will have nothing to give us. Because we have forced this reward out of the people. So charging is not of God. We must stop that, and we must stop that immediately.
So, are you in any way endorsing these people who invite people and take care of them? What would be your own minimum responsibility if you are to invite a guest to come and minister in your church? What would be your minimum responsibility to that person, even if the person doesn't ask for any money?
You know, one of the issues that we don't balance things. I went somewhere and someone didn't give me money, so anywhere I'm going, I have to collect money. That is at the extreme. Now, the best way to treat someone in ministry as a pastor is the way you will like to be treated. Somebody. Where is this person coming from? Okay? For example, the person is coming from Abuja. How many hours? How long will this person? Okay? And how many days is this person staying? I check these things. How many days will this person stay? This person have a family, for example, and have left his family. You cannot just leave town and go somewhere else and don't drop something for your family. So I check these things to determine the person's honorarium. His age or size of his church or doesn't matter to me. I try to check the level of his sacrifices and what I can offer. So thinking about myself, if I go to his place, how do I want to be treated? Where will I want to sleep, for example? If I can afford a place of 10,000, I will not give him a place of 5,000. I will want to treat him the way I want him to treat me. So it is actually wrong to bring somebody somewhere and don't do anything and don't try to pay. If it's such that you cannot take care of that person, I have always advised pastor to be open to such a person. Please, I want you to come and preach for us, but Ford, this is I don't know if you can handle your transport and all that, so I can just come and bless us. There are a lot of good pastors that are willing to take care of themselves just to come to your place, bless God's people, and return to where they are coming from. I do that, and I know that there are several others that will willingly do that. If you are open to them at that time of invitation, their expectation, can be taken care of. So when they come, they don't feel disappointed. But that doesn't mean that if you can, you should hold anything back. So do to them what you want them to do unto you. And if it's so important for them to come and you cannot take care of them, tell them. And I also believe that if you are inviting somebody and it is not urgent, you should plan towards it.
Okay.
A lot of times, most churches already know that they're going to have a convention in March, another one in August, another one in December. So as you are preparing your people to pray for all of this program and all that, you should also know that we are bringing somebody that should be taken care of. So the financial aspect should already come into planning. So that you know that for this person that is coming is like this, like this, like this. You work towards it for that 1 to 3 months. So that's the way I look at it.
Joined in the studio by Apostle Michael Iduh, Senior Pastor, Numa Fire Ministries in Ogobia, and we have been tackling the topic full-time ministry. I'm going to give opportunity to my guest right now to give his final remarks and a word of advice to people who are there who are listening to us, the pastors, the ministers, and of course members of the body of Christ. So, sir, please give your closing remarks and your advice to our audience and our viewers.
A minister, someone that is called into ministry, have become a tool in the hands of God. So I believe that when God have called you, you have to use your life and the life of God's people. There are so many people that will come around you that will need help. Some of them are able to, like we are in the studio now, for example, and I am seeing cameramen here. This is a good job. Now, if we have our people trained in church, pastor, if you train your people in church and they can handle the camera very well and they can do all forms of video editing, now they will do this. They will do this for your church, and your church can also begin to give this as service to not just other churches, but to everybody in the world. People are looking for trusted photographers, you know. People are also looking for trusted cameramen. And what better people can they find than anointed people in church?
Actually.
So let your people do that. Now, there's something that we do in Ogobia. When there are people that don't have money to start up a business. They are looking for food. What we have done there is that there's a Gari processing factory there. If you don't have money, you don't have a naira, you can wake up in the morning, take a knife from your kitchen and go to that factory. There's someone there, because people are doing daily contribution there. There's someone there that we buy cassava for you right in that, from that fund, that cooperative fund. You are not a member. You go to that factory, they give you money, they help you to buy the cassava. You peel it there. The pan to fry it is there. And you know the good news? They buy it from you there. Yes. So you have gone there without money. Now, even if you cannot peel, there are people peeling one basin for 200 naira there. And that's cooperative. We pay for you. Now, they just stand there and check how much have we spent on this person that came today. How much have we sold the Gari? How much is your profit? They give you your profit. The cooperative know how to go and sell that Gari. You understand? That's what we are doing for them. So when they come and say, we don't have, if we hear some of their challenges, we just say, go to that factory. You understand? Now, whether you like it or not, that is ministry. They came weak, they went back empowered. It says strengthen the feeble knees. It doesn't just mean spiritual strengthening. It can be financial strengthening, it can be emotional strengthening. So I am appealing to pastors to look inward. The solution usually is within. There are things you can do with your people that will help them to grow on their own and also become helpers to your ministry. And another thing I want to say is that a pastor that is selling something that is not holy water, like selling Gari, for example, or selling yam, is not less holy than a pastor that is selling holy water and anointing oil. So we shouldn't see that when people are doing this kind of things, they are less men of God than the one that are sitting down and only praying. God can speak to you when you are selling bread. God can speak to you when you are sleeping. God can speak to you when you are doing Okada. So look at where you are in ministry. Begin to do something that will help you, so that you will be of less burden to other people. One of the reasons, like our brother asked me this just now, he said, what about people that charge? One of the reasons why people charge, sir, is because they don't have any other source. You know, they are living bogus life. They want to compete with their contemporaries in the world, and they have to keep up to a lifestyle, truly. Especially those that are, that have assumed celebrity status. They need a lot of money to service that lifestyle. And trying to keep up, they need to devise, unholy forms to raise fund. So apart from that charging you're talking about, there are men of God that know people that are doing illegal business, and their own is to be praying for them. Yes, they are doing that. Somebody is in drug business, or somebody is in oil bunkering, but you are his pastor. He comes for prayer and he brings tithe to you, and you cannot rebuke that person. You are not talking about his soul going to hell, but because you need money to do big crusades, you need money to build that big church, you need money to buy the latest car, you need money for your convoy and all that, to service that your expensive lifestyle. You are not rebuking the life of that person. The person is multiplying sin, and you are collecting tithe. Why are they doing that? They are doing that because there are no sources. Okay? God can genuinely bless the work of our hands if we will commit ourselves to hard work. Ministry itself is hard work. So one of the reasons why people charge is because they are idle. They are not putting their other talents to work, and they need to sustain the ministry somehow. So they are into a lot of illegalities so that they can survive. So I encourage such people. It doesn't matter how long you have been idle or how long you have stayed without fully deploying your potentials. I'm inviting you today that you can learn something. You can learn a trade. You can. We have opportunities now that we can go on YouTube and learn things.
Yes.
You can learn anything at all. That the other day I just said let me learn OBS, and I typed OBS on YouTube, and I found a lot of videos that I'm following, and it's interesting. There are different kind of anything at all now you can learn on the internet. So I invite you to go to the internet, learn a lot of things. You can learn digital marketing. You can learn video editing. There are people that are looking for people that can write about their brands, to write for advertisement, they speak about their books, speak about their product and all that. You can learn how to write. You can pick up skills on writing a book or converting your books to ebooks, and coming up with a website that allow them to pay before they download your book. So they don't need to come to Nigeria to get your hard copy. They are in USA. They have paid through PayPal or through Paystack or through Flutterwave. They pay a token and then they download your book. You know, the book is just there and it's one. And per download, they are just paying you. There are different ways you can support yourself now. You don't have to charge. You can be blessed genuinely by God. So I encourage you to pick up something. You can actually, apart from speaking to people in church, you know, one thing that I know about the Bible is that when you read the Bible, you become a wise person. So you get to know about business. You can train yourself to become a life coach, train yourself to become a business coach. And you begin to have sessions on WhatsApp where people can pay 1,000 naira, and they form a private group. When you come and you talk to them, and you know, before you know, you do it monthly and something is coming up. You can do that also on YouTube, and people are subscribed to that channel. And as your views increase, you get paid by YouTube. There are different opportunities now. If you really don't actually know what to do and you are bothered about what we are talking about, you can reach out to our host here, and I believe that we will be able to talk more about this and see how God can take you to the next level. I encourage us as a church to be the light. Whatever it is that the world needs, I believe that we as the light, we should learn these things and take these things to the world. Let the church be more open to new ideas. Facebook, for example, social media, people say is a bad thing. The platforms are not bad. What is bad is the content. Why is the content bad? The devil's people are putting their own content on the platform. God's people are not putting their content on the platform. So now we are saying the platform is bad. The platform is not bad. It is the content that is bad. So how do we do this? We can change what we see now as that bad platform into a good one if we start putting our content. So let us be more on Facebook. Let us preach. Use every available means that embrace these things, dominate them, and get our content there massively, such a way that when you are looking for a piece from the devil, it's hard to find. We are just saturated the social media with our godly content. So don't shy away from these things, dominate it. And I believe as we do that, God will be happy with us, and God's kingdom will come to live among all men. God bless you.
Thank you. And we also like to appeal to all of you pastors. I notice a trend that most pastors, when they want services from church members, they ask them to sow it as a seed without compensating them financially. Then when they want, in quote, quality ones, they now go outside to get professionals. You know, I want to appeal to people in your church who do one form of handwork or the other, and seek for ways to improve their services, improve their service delivery, and create room for them. For instance, you could develop your music team, invest in them, and then develop them to the point where where somebody is needing a live band to perform in weddings, you make room for your people to go, develop your decoration outfit unit to the point where if somebody is in need of decoration for an event, you push them to go. With that, those departments can even become self-sufficient financially and won't have to overburden the church purse again by asking for monthly or weekly budget. So please, pastors, ministers of God watching this program, please make room in your heart to see how you could promote people in your church who do one form of hand on the program with us. Let's worship. My guest has been Apostle Michael Iduh, staying with us on the program.
Yeah, welcome, sir.
And if you've been following us, we also like you to make do by sharing this program. Invite your friends to like us on all our various social media platforms. And we look forward to having you again on this program, same time next week. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
And oh, how he talks. Oh, how you talk. He's been really, really, really good. Oh, how you tell me. Oh, how you tell me that I belong to you. That I am your own. Yes, God. Glory to Jesus.
Ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for the legendary Tasha Cobbs Leonard.